My father promised he'd be at my graduation. Instead, he gave my brother a $2 million villa, then stood on a stage and said, "Smart girls don't build empires, they build expectations." I kept my mouth shut for years, let them shrink me, erase me, rewrite me out of my own story. But when I found out he used my scholarship fund to buy that house, I stopped playing nice. And when I saw my mother's pearls around my sister-in-law's neck, I gave him back his check with a note. Want to know what it said? I woke up that morning hoping the world might feel different by the time I went to bed. The sun had barely crept into the kitchen, and I moved slower than usual. Not from dread, more like I was afraid of messing something up. I slipped on the pressed blouse I'd ironed twice the night before. I pinned the honor cords, checked the zipper on my gown 3 times, and stared at myself in the mirror longer than I meant to. Mom used to say, "Graduations aren't just for you. They're for everyone who said you couldn't." That thought held me steady as I replayed an old voicemail from my father, one where his voice was warmer, lighter. "Of course I'll be there, kiddo. Wouldn't miss it for the world." Before stepping out, I opened the drawer in my nightstand and pulled out a photo. It was worn, corners curled, a snapshot of me at age 6, sitting on his shoulders, both of us grinning under a flag at the local 4th of July fair. I tucked it gently into the inside flap of my purse. Today, I become someone no one can overlook again. The Stanford Amphitheater was alive with sound, families calling names, kids adjusting caps, parents carrying floral bouquets and cameras too big for their shoulders. Rows of seats fanned out beneath the California sun, each one marked by placards for graduates and their guests. I scanned the audience once, then again. No sign of him. I reminded myself that traffic out of Scottsdale could be unpredictable. He might have gotten held up, misread the start time. It's possible. A staff member rolled out a folding chair and looked around before glancing at me. I walked toward her and handed over the card I had printed the night before. In bold black letters it read, "Reserved for Mr. Dorian Kessler." She nodded politely and placed it in the front row, 3rd seat from the left. My classmate Julia, tying her hair back behind me, leaned in and whispered, "That's optimistic." I laughed, or something like it. Then I turned off my phone, not because I was confident, but because I wasn't ready for what it might say. We lined up alphabetically, waiting to be called toward the stage. The string quartet near the steps was playing something too cheerful. My palms started sweating. That's when I felt the buzz. My phone, tucked inside the small compartment of my gown, lit up against my hip. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the fabric. Curiosity won. The message wasn't long. In fact, it was barely a full sentence. "Can't make it. Big day for Zaid. Priorities." That was it. No greeting, no punctuation, not even his name at the end. I stared at the words until they started to blur. My legs didn't buckle, but they wanted to. A hollow pressure bloomed in my chest. Not the kind that made you cry right away, the kind that made it hard to breathe without feeling stupid for expecting anything else. I pressed my palm over the screen, locking it, swallowing whatever was trying to rise in my throat. My worth just got ranked, again, and I wasn't even second. They called my name. Applause started, faint at first, louder once a few classmates caught on. I lifted my head, adjusted the collar of my gown, and took the first step forward. One heel, then the next, up the platform, across the wood planks. I looked out into the crowd, where the camera operators aimed their lenses toward the family section. The chair with his name on it caught the afternoon light, still empty. The announcer read from the card, "Kalis Brennick, Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, summa cum laude," accompanied by... Pause. Silence. Then, "accompanied by her accomplishments." There were claps, cheers even. But all I could feel was absence. I walked across that stage with poise, yes, but inside, everything felt like cardboard. Numb, thin, easy to collapse. I graduated into absence. When it ended, most graduates were wrapped in hugs, cameras flashing like small victories. A few had banners, others had balloons. Parents grinned wide enough to split their cheeks. I walked off quietly, heading toward the shade behind the equipment tent. My advisor, Professor Owens, caught up to me and tried to hand me a gift bag. You made us proud, Kalis. I nodded. That was all I could manage. I didn't want to say thank you. I didn't want to say anything. A woman I didn't know passed by and told me my speech was brilliant. I tried to smile. It felt crooked. Then, through the curtain flaps, I saw them folding up the extra chairs. The one with my father's name was the last to be taken. I stared at it being folded shut. Not angry, just blank. I saved him a seat. I shouldn't have saved the expectation. I walked away, diploma in one hand, the creased name card in the other. The Uber had barely pulled out of the Stanford Loop when I caught myself still clutching that stupid name card, the one with his name, the one I'd printed and set down on that empty chair like it meant something. My fingers had creased it to hell by now. I glanced at my phone. 7 missed calls from cousins and 2 from my mother's sister. All congratulations, I guess. None from him. Not even a text. Out of habit, I opened Instagram. First post. A live stream banner. The thumbnail froze me. Dad standing in front of a ribbon-wrapped villa, beaming like a man who's just claimed the moon. Right beside him, of course, Zaid. Same smirk he always had when he'd done nothing and still got everything. The caption? Introducing the Kessler Legacy Villa. I clicked without thinking. Just curiosity, I told myself. Curiosity or maybe self-sabotage. It wasn't a private family celebration. It was a full production. Guests, champagne, branded signage. A polished affair with speeches and PR handlers, and even one of those floral photo walls. Dad looked like a politician mid-campaign. Zaid was basking in it, nodding as if he'd built the thing himself. The camera panned to a gold-plated plaque above the villa's double doors. To Zaid, the future of the Kessler name. My stomach didn't sink. It locked up. All that effort, all those years, all the silence I'd swallowed just to be palatable. And this is what they'd been planning behind my back. While I was pulling all-nighters to finish my thesis and designing a mentorship program for girls in tech, they were busy pouring concrete into someone else's future. Then he stepped to the podium, Dorian Kessler, my father, still in his prime, silvered just enough to look respectable, still with that same deliberate way of speaking like every word he said should be carved into marble. He started with the usual, legacy, values, the importance of vision. Then came the dig. Nowadays, he said, chuckling lightly, people think education means everything. But smart girls, degrees, they don't build empires, they build expectations. The crowd laughed, polite, complicit. Zaid smiled, straightened his blazer. I hit pause, then rewind, played it again. Smart girls, degrees, expectations. He meant me. He wasn't even hiding it. And the worst part? He believed it. He always had. He never said it in so many words, but he never needed to. That line wasn't off the cuff. It was who he'd always been, just bolder now that I wasn't in the room. And I wasn't in the room. I remembered one Sunday dinner, 2 years back. I'd just shown Dad a prototype I'd been working on. AI-assisted education tools for underfunded schools. Something real, something scalable. He looked at it, nodded, then said, "That's impressive, darling, but where's the real-world impact? Can you sell it?" I laughed it off, thought he just didn't get it, but maybe he did. Maybe he got it exactly, and didn't like what it meant. He never wanted me to win, he just wanted me to behave. Still in the back seat of the Uber, I opened Zillow, typed in the villa's address. $2.03 million. Closed escrow 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks? I opened my inbox, scrolled, found the email he'd sent me just last month. "Sweetheart, money's tight right now. Can't support the coding grant idea. Maybe next quarter." He sent that with a smiley face. I remember the smiley face. I didn't cry. I didn't fume. I just went still. The program I'd designed to help girls like me, bright, underestimated, had stalled because I couldn't secure launch funding. The foundation I'd pitched to had passed, citing limited co-investment. Dad could have changed that with a single call. Instead, he wrote a check to build a house my name would never be spoken in. Back at the apartment, I sat in front of my laptop, letting the live stream buffer to its end before I closed the tab and erased my history. That night, I deleted the picture of us from my phone, the one from my 12th birthday, Him holding a cake, me beside him, eyes still lit up from believing. So that's what you chose, I whispered. Not just instead of me, but at the cost of me. The apartment was quiet, not peaceful, just quiet the way a hotel room feels after checkout. I had come home the night before, dropped my bag by the couch, and left everything untouched. I didn't turn on any lights. Just sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and stared at the screen like it might blink first. I had a reason for logging in. A week ago, I'd started pulling together a proposal for seed funding, something I could show investors once I proved I wasn't just another woman with a diploma and a dream. I needed to verify the balance in the education fund account, the one Mom and I had opened together years ago. She'd started it with the bonus from her final project, back when she was still consulting. Said it was for the future version of me who'll build what I couldn't. The login went through. The screen flickered. The account showed closed. 3 months ago. I leaned back, blinked a few times. Then I saw it. One last transaction. Asset Development Transfer, Legacy Holdings. I didn't have to guess. I wasn't shocked. That's the part that made me sick. I wasn't shocked at all. The money that was supposed to back my pilot program for underprivileged girls in tech had gone to Zaid's villa. The walls they built with it, that was my foundation, just in someone else's name. I opened my email, scrolled to the thread from Dad, last month when I'd asked for a bridge loan. Nothing big, just something to keep my mentorship app in development through Q3. His reply, tight budget this quarter, can't commit right now. And then the cherry on top, you're strong, Kalis. You'll find a way. At the time, I thought it was meant to encourage me. Now it read like code for you're disposable. It's funny. People don't always betray you by what they do. Sometimes it's how easily they let you figure it out. I reopened the folder with my early pitch drafts. One of the documents still had tracked edits, comments from him, notes about branding, even a few jokes he'd written in the margins. There was one file I hadn't opened since before graduation. It was a scanned PDF titled K Legacy, Proposed Allocation. Inside, at the top, was a handwritten note from Mom. Dorian, if anything happens to me, use this for Kalis. She's already doing more than I ever did. Let this fund her start. Her handwriting, her voice, right there. Below it was a digital approval stamp, his signature. Date, 2 weeks before Zaid's villa was purchased. So it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a decision. He took my mother's dream and built it into a wall I'll never be invited behind. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because I was too tired to waste another drop on something so predictable. Instead, my mind drifted to a day years back. I was 12. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the three of us were sitting on the floor playing Monopoly. I was ahead, owned 3 railroads, a hotel on Boardwalk. I was ruthless. Dad looked at me, smiled in that weird, half-proud way, and said, "Let your brother win this one. It's good for his confidence." I hesitated, but I'm winning. You're too competitive, sweetie. Not a great trait in a girl. I remember staring at my tiny paper money. I'd earned it fair. But something inside me wilted. I slid over my properties and told Zaid, "Congratulations." He didn't say thanks. I started folding my cards young, just so I could stay in the game. Back at the table, I began printing. Emails, approvals, transfers, everything. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I wasn't even sure what I was building. But my hands didn't shake from fear. They shook from the kind of fury that comes when you realize you've been erased, not forgotten. I thought of all those nights I stayed up sketching pitch decks, coding after work, rehearsing my demo pitch into my bathroom mirror. All that time, the vault was open. I just didn't know the door had been turned away from me. I looked down at the documents, at all the ways they'd said, "Not you." I whispered, "I'm not just fighting to be seen. I'm fighting to get back what was stolen." I gathered the papers into a red folder. On the tab, I wrote, "Evidence, KB. Not for court, not yet, but for myself. You want a legacy? Let's build one." The email came from my cousin Mia. No subject line, just a forwarded flyer and a note that said, "Thought you'd want to see this before it goes live." I clicked on the attachment. It was an invitation. Classy layout, bold serif fonts, Kessler crest at the top. The kind of branding Dad paid good money for. Honoring the heirs of Kessler Impact. That was the title. Zaid's name appeared 3 times. Head of Innovation, Community Liaison, Future Board Chair, Dorian Kessler, Keynote Speaker. The venue? The same corporate estate where I'd once pitched my entire education platform. The place where Dad had nodded politely and said, "Impressive, darling," then pulled funding a month later. Now, here it was again. But this time, I wasn't even listed as attending. Not forgotten, omitted. I sat with that word for a while. It had a different weight than forgotten. Forgotten can be accidental. Omitted is surgical. I debated replying, or calling, or showing up. But something told me to wait. Watch first. Later that afternoon, I got added to a group text by mistake. New intern probably thought all family members shared the same thread. The messages rolled in fast. Emojis, inside jokes, logistics. Then came this one from Aunt Cheryl. "I hope Kalis doesn't find out through the press," followed by one from Zaid. "We all know she's brilliant, but this event is about continuity, not controversy." And another. "She'll understand. She always does." That last one stayed with me. They saw my silence as grace. But what they really meant was, she won't fight back. And maybe they were right. I'd spent so long trying not to make waves, I didn't realize they'd pushed me out to sea. The house was quiet. I walked to the pile of unopened mail on the counter. Stuff I'd been ignoring for weeks. One envelope stood out. Thick. Embossed. Marked with the seal of the National Women in Innovation Committee. I ripped it open carefully, even though something in my chest already knew. Inside was a formal invitation. Congratulations on being selected as a recipient of the Rising Innovators Award. Ceremony held 2 weeks ago. The envelope had a faint slit across the seal. It had been opened, then resealed. There was no RSVP email, no follow-up, because they thought I got it. I didn't, because someone made sure of that. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I'd moved past shaking. I typed the event name into YouTube, found the live stream, skipped through until I saw the presenter reading the names. When mine didn't come up, I assumed they'd replaced me. And they had. A woman I didn't know accepted the award in my place. She gave a nice speech, said all the right things. The crowd applauded. In the comments, someone wrote, "Where's Kalis Brennick?" Another said, "She probably had something better to do." Then this one, "Her family probably told her she wasn't a priority." I closed the tab, sat still. The silence wasn't empty, it was packed. It wasn't just the award, it was a pattern. Senior year of high school, I'd been nominated for a state academic medal. Found out weeks later when a teacher asked why I didn't show up. Dad said they must have sent it late, but he handled all my mail back then. That should have been a clue. Now I wondered, how many other recognitions had gone missing? How many letters never made it to my hands? I opened a new spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, opportunity. Column C, who was involved. Column D, what went wrong? The list started slow. Then it grew, faster than I expected. Summer Tech Fellowships. A mentorship grant I never heard back from. Speaking events I never got the details for. All this time, I thought I just wasn't lucky. Turns out, I'd been managed, curated, like a liability with good PR. This wasn't just omission, it was erasure. I looked at the spreadsheet. Then I looked at the invitation still sitting on the table. "They didn't just ignore me," I whispered. "They've rewritten the whole narrative." I opened a new tab, drafted an email to the National Women in Innovation Committee. Subject line, missing recipient, Brennick. But before I could hit send, something else slid into my inbox. A new email. Different address, no subject, just a name I hadn't seen in years. The envelope didn't have a return address, just my name, handwritten, no stamp, no label, no company logo. It showed up on a Tuesday. I'd spent most of the day ignoring people and deleting emails I didn't want to read. This one, though, something about it felt different, heavier. I opened it at the kitchen counter. It wasn't bulky, just a few pages folded together, marked confidential in bold across the top. Legal paper, scanned copies, stamped. The first page was a property transfer form, villa address, parcel number, transaction history. And right there, typed in clear block letters under original beneficiary, Kalis Arden Brennick, my name. The second page, amended version, same address, same date. New name, Zaid Dorian Kessler. Handwritten note on a sticky tab stuck to the corner of the second page. She wanted this for you. I thought you should know. V. I stared at it for a long time. That villa wasn't just a house. It was Mom's final wish. My future. My starting ground. Now it was Zaid's weekend photo op. I pulled the printed papers close and examined the metadata. I needed to see when the change had been made. Date of the revision, the exact same day I got that tight budget this quarter email from my father, the one where he called me strong, said I'd figure it out. He knew I was going to be denied by the state grant board, and instead of stepping in to help, he stepped over me. I whispered to the room, he didn't just choose Zaid, he unchose me. No one answered, of course, but my gut did. I'd seen versions of this before, smaller, quieter, college, freshman year. I got into that summer research fellowship at MIT. I was over the moon. I remember calling my boyfriend at the time. His name was Brett. He was older, just graduated, working some IT help desk job he hated. I told him the news, thinking he'd be proud. Instead, he paused and said, "That's amazing, but I don't know." "You're amazing, but I'm not sure I can be with someone so ambitious all the time." A week later, he ghosted me, just vanished. No explanation. When I finally got through to him, all he said was, "You make me feel like I'm holding you back. I just wanted someone normal." I never told anyone. I took the hit, folded it up, and put it somewhere deep inside. That line stayed with me for years. Too ambitious. As if that's something a man could say without choking. Now, sitting here with these documents, I started to see the pattern. It wasn't just one boyfriend, one award, one villa. It was years of people telling me, subtly or directly, that I was too much, or not enough, or the wrong kind of smart, or the wrong kind of woman. Sometimes they were polite about it. Other times they used their silence to underline it. And I kept adjusting, dimmed myself, pulled back, made space for their comfort. I opened Zillow. I typed in Oregon, Colorado, Vermont. I searched for rentals under my name, no credit pull, pet-friendly. For a minute, I thought I might actually do it, disappear, change my last name, start somewhere cold where no one knew what had been taken from me. But then I looked back down at that deed, top line, Arden Kessler, handwritten, ink slightly faded, but still proud. She didn't start that account for a son she never had. She didn't sign her name so someone else could cross out mine. They replaced me, but I haven't replaced her. I stood up, walked to the cabinet, pulled out the accordion folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were project pitches, rejection letters, congratulatory emails, early prototypes. I laid them out on the table like a forensic pathologist. Every lost grant, every missed award, every email I never received but found out about months later. I labeled the new file. The redacted years. Created a backup folder on Google Drive. Password: Arden123. I wasn't holding on to this out of bitterness. I was holding on to it because I wasn't ready to bury my mother's intent. This wasn't just about property. It was about pattern. And patterns leave fingerprints. I opened the PDF again and zoomed into her signature, bottom right corner. The stroke was smooth, bold, like she signed it knowing one day I'd need to see it for myself. I said it out loud just in case she could still hear me. "You chose me. They buried that. But I'm digging it up." The envelope looked like it had been through a decade of drawers before finding its way to me. Yellowed, soft along the edges, my name written in a careful script I hadn't seen since middle school. Hoyt Gladden. He was the kind of teacher who noticed the kids everyone else forgot. Back then, I was a quiet overachiever, more comfortable solving equations than raising my hand. Mr. Gladden had called me dangerous smart once in front of the entire class. I thought he was joking. Now I know better. His letter started with a congratulations. He assumed I'd received the National Innovation Award and wanted to say how proud he was. Enclosed, he wrote, was a scanned copy of the recommendation he'd written for me 12 years ago, sent on my behalf for a Women in Tech Overseas Fellowship, a program I never knew existed. "I still wonder," he wrote, "why your name was pulled from the shortlist. I hope you found your path anyway." I didn't breathe for a full minute. I hadn't found it, not all of it, not the version he'd envisioned, and now I knew why. I drove out the next morning. Mid-September heat. Slight breeze. I hadn't been to the storage unit in almost 2 years, but the key was still on my backup ring. The door groaned when I opened it, revealing a life boxed and stacked. Books, photo albums, half-used notebooks. I went straight for the plastic bin labeled Careless, Post 18. Inside, a shoebox. A familiar one. Mom's old New Balance box, scuffed on one corner. I pulled it out and popped the lid. Files, envelopes, a handwritten list. Scholarships to consider after MIT. I skimmed through until one caught my eye. An application addressed to the Global Science Women's Program, folded neatly, ready to send. At the bottom was her signature, Arden Kessler. Taped to the front of the envelope was a neon yellow post-it. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Dorian's. "We're not sending her away." This is not a discussion. That one sentence answered questions I didn't even know I had. She hadn't forgotten to submit it. She'd been overruled. I stood there, surrounded by dust and cardboard, and I could feel something in me shift, not snap, not break, but realign. Later that night, I made a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table with the documents spread out like puzzle pieces. "You don't need to stay small just to stay close, honey." That's what Mom had told me one night senior year as we cleaned dishes in the quiet after dinner. She'd handed me a towel and said it so casually, I almost missed it. I'd nodded, not really understanding. Now I did. She wasn't just talking about leaving Arizona. She was talking about unshrinking. I added the files to the red binder, the redacted years, new section. Labeled it Fellowships Blocked. Everything I discovered the past week pointed in one direction. Sabotage disguised as fatherly protection. Dorian hadn't yelled. He hadn't slammed doors. He'd just signed things, denied things. Quietly, strategically. "He didn't silence me with force," I muttered. "He silenced me with paperwork." I scanned each file, named it by date, uploaded it to a private Google Drive, created new backups on 2 USB sticks. Password, Arden123. Then I opened my email. There was still that draft I'd started to the National Women in Innovation Committee. I attached the files, Mom's application, Mr. Gladden's letter, the amended award notification. I didn't ask for validation. I didn't ask for apology. I just sent them the evidence. I clicked over to another tab. An old podcast I'd listened to in college had done a whole series on women erased from their own stories. The host's email was still listed in the show notes. I wrote, "I think I have something you should hear. And maybe, finally, others should too." I hit send. The cursor blinked on the screen. I stared at it like it might talk back. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for permission. Not from him, not from the family, not even from the version of me that used to think silence was noble. Then, just as I was about to shut everything down, another email popped up. Subject: Confidential, Legacy Transition Discussion, Internal Only. Sender: Dorian Kessler. The message wasn't for me. I wasn't even in the CC. But somehow, it had landed in my inbox. The invitation slid through my mail slot late in the afternoon. Cream cardstock, gold embossed, the kind of paper that screams prestige without saying a word. Dated last week. Generational impact. Kessler Voices in Innovation. I scanned the list of speakers. Joel Martin, a guy I mentored in the Accelerator program 2 years ago, was headlining. My name? Not there. Not even as an attendee. Last I heard, I was supposed to be closing the panel. Guess someone changed the script. The event was downtown, same night, a 2-hour drive in evening traffic. I didn't RSVP. I just showed up. I didn't wear black or anything loud. Just a gray blazer, clean hair, a look that didn't try to impress. I took a seat in the far back, slipped in during the second speaker's story about innovation as inheritance. Joel was on stage by the time I sat. He was comfortable, easy, made people laugh. Told a story about building a solution with the incredible support of the Kessler family. I'd written the damn prototype. Not once did he mention me. Then came the slideshow. Pictures from the villa opening, Zaid cutting the ribbon, my father mid-speech, smiling, everyone beaming. Then the family photo appeared. Full screen. My mother, my father, Zaid, even Zaid's wife. No me. I gripped the metal armrest, felt the chill of it against my palm. Not forgotten. Removed. This is the kind of silence, I whispered to myself, that sounds like, she's too much. She'll make things complicated. That line had been tossed around in family dinners. Kalis always has a question, they'd say. Kalis likes to push. No one ever said it like a compliment. I thought about Mom's words. Sometimes they don't bury you with dirt. They bury you with erasure. This wasn't neglect. This was design. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, typed a single line. Proof is only powerful if you know when to use it. During the break, while the audience chatted over sparkling cider and boxed pastries, I walked quietly to the back corridor where the media crew had set up shop. I introduced myself to the guy managing the upload drive. Calm, firm. I'm part of the Kessler family. Can I get a copy of the raw footage for our internal archive? He didn't blink. Sure, just drop a drive in here. I pulled one from my bag, labeled clean, handed it over. You'll have it by tonight, he said. I nodded once and left. No need to argue when you know exactly what's being erased. At the lobby doors, I paused to grab my coat. That's when a voice behind me, soft, unsure, called my name. Ms. Brennick? I turned. A girl, barely 20, badge swinging off her lanyard, stood holding a notepad. I just wanted to say, she stammered. I know what you built. Joel presented your original model to us last year. He didn't say it was yours, but I looked it up. It matched your open-source design. For the first time all night, I smiled. Not wide, not triumphant, just tired and true. That's how stories survive, I said. They find new voices when the old ones are silenced. I handed her my card. If you ever want to build something that won't be erased, call me. She nodded, eyes wider than her words. Back at the apartment, I dropped my coat on the back of a chair and plugged in the media drive. I wasn't looking for a moment of triumph, just wanted to see what they were recording in my absence. The drive opened, a folder tree appeared, footage, slides, panel deck, then one folder, oddly named, Internal Planning, Legacy Transition. I clicked, no password. Inside was a single document. Succession Plan, Final Draft. I scrolled to page 2. There it was, line by line, phase out, Kalis Brennick, rationale, disruption risk, brand inconsistency. They weren't just rewriting the story, they were planning my deletion. The invitation called me a silent donor. It arrived 3 days before the annual Kessler Foundation banquet, printed on heavy cream cardstock like all things meant to look expensive. There was no mention of my work, no panel slot, no seat assignment, just an acknowledgement tucked into the back of the program, buried beneath a long list of men and legacy partners. They didn't expect me to come, but I did. I showed up in navy, Arden's color. Not to start anything, not to prove a point, just to be seen. The ballroom was what you'd expect from a family trying too hard. Crystal chandeliers, slow jazz, waiters in tuxedos who called everyone sir, even when they were being insulted. I arrived mid-program, no greeting, no glances that lasted more than 2 seconds. I took a seat in the far corner. Quiet. Present. On stage, Zaid and his wife were giving a speech about gratitude and legacy. He smiled like he'd built something. She laughed at every pause. Neither of them mentioned where it all came from. Then I saw it, around her neck, the necklace, my mother's pearls. I stared at them for a long time, unsure if my vision was playing tricks. But no, those were Arden's wedding pearls. I remember the box, the velvet inside. I remember her telling me, "These are for your day, when you know it's your own." No one asked. No one offered. They just gave them away. I stood, walked over to the bar, and ordered a ginger ale, my hand tightening around the rim of the glass just to keep from shattering. A man in line beside me muttered something about the Kessler family having real class. I turned slightly and said, not loudly, not softly, "Some inherit homes, others inherit erasure." He didn't respond. During the post-dinner milling around, I spotted a journalist from the tech world I knew. Smart, fair, had a reputation for following the stories others missed. I walked over and handed her a red folder. "If you want the truth about this family's foundation," I said, "here's where it begins." She flipped it open right there. Inside were all of it: copies of the canceled grant, the erased award letter, Mom's deed, my original design specs, dates, signatures, transfers. My voice shook a little when I said, "I don't want credit, I want clarity." She asked, "Do you want to go on record?" I looked her straight in the eye. "No, I want the record to speak for itself." I didn't linger. I walked straight to the event coordinator's table and placed an envelope down in front of her. Inside was the original check Dad gave me years ago, the one meant to encourage me to start small. On top was a note, scrawled in ink that didn't shake. "A refund for everything you never gave me." Next to that, a printed copy of the revised inheritance transfer, the one with Zaid's name. I'd attached a red post-it. "Legacy doesn't live here anymore." I walked out. No mic drop, no speech, just steps. Clean and quiet. The next morning, my phone buzzed non-stop. The story had gone live, anonymously leaked on a respected business forum. It didn't name me, but anyone who knew, knew. Comments exploded. How many daughters are written out of the will of their own history? This is what generational gaslighting looks like. Don't tell me it's just about merit when they rewrite the script before she enters the room. I didn't comment, didn't respond. I just read. Line after line. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was the only one carrying this weight. Later that night, I was folding laundry when the knock came. Firm. 3 taps. I opened the door to a courier, dressed in plain clothes, holding a small black velvet box. No envelope. Just a white card taped to the top. From someone who should have stopped this a long time ago. I didn't recognize the handwriting. Inside the box was the original deed to the villa. Mom's handwriting. Mom's signature. Unedited. Unburied. The room was brighter than I expected. Industrial lighting overhead, clean rows of white chairs, the quiet buzz of people filing in with programs in hand. I didn't feel nervous, not like before. No pacing, no shallow breathing, just calm. I took my place backstage, a badge hanging around my neck. This time, it had the right name. As I waited, I heard the host shuffle her cue cards, voice carrying softly over the mic. "Please welcome. Kalis Bren. Catherine Kessler?" A pause. Laughter, scattered at first, then sharper, louder. Someone in the front row called out, "It's Kalis Brennick." I didn't flinch, didn't frown, just walked onto that stage like it was mine. I let the silence sit with the room for a moment before I began. "For a long time," I said, "I thought silence was my shield. But silence doesn't protect. It delays. What heals is truth. No slides, no notes, just the words I'd lived. I've learned that legacy isn't inherited. It's built. And sometimes, you can inherit a house and still be homeless if your name was never on the door." I didn't mention Dad, or Zaid, or the villa. I didn't have to. The room heard me anyway. After the event, there was a reception, light food, networking, polite laughter bouncing off glass walls. That's when I saw him, standing at the far end of the room near the catering table, holding a folder, not moving. Dorian Kessler. He didn't come closer, just looked. Not angry, not apologetic, not anything I could name. I gave him a nod. Nothing more. Not cold, but final. Then I turned my back and left. Later that night, after I'd kicked off my shoes and set down my phone, I remembered the box, the one from the courier. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd sorted files and built timelines. Inside the velvet box was the original deed, Arden's handwriting. Her signature, still sharp, still intact. No edits, no note. Just a folded piece of printer paper. It was her letter to the Global Fellowship, the one I never got to apply for, the one Dorian buried. She'd written it in her own voice, full of conviction. She will do more than I ever dared. She will not ask to be chosen. She will choose. She left me the truth, not to carry, but to walk on. She knew I wouldn't be welcomed where I came from. So she wrote me a way out. Weeks passed. My name started appearing in places I hadn't planned for, articles, interviews, podcasts. But this time, it was on my terms. Zaid pulled back from events, citing family matters. A journalist once asked me, "Do you think your family will ever make peace?" I answered, "There are stories that deserve peace. Mine deserves clarity." And I left it there. That spring, I visited my mother's garden, the one no one had touched since she passed. I brought a young fig tree, planted it in the center, just as she once said she would. "Figs are stubborn," she told me once. "They take their time, but when they grow, they own the space." No plaque, no ribbon, just soil and time. The final event I hosted was small, local, intimate. At the front of the room was a chair, empty, like the one I once left for him. But this time, it had a nameplate, reserved for the woman who built this. I sat beside it, and I didn't need to fill it to prove anything.